Good morning. It is 8:20 a.m. on Sunday, April 14th, 2019. Once again, coming to you here, from South Korea. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Today, I am continuing my rewatch of Gravity Falls with the season 1 finale, Gideon Rises. So this is an appropriately epic, episode for our season finale, coming as it does as part 2 from last week, where we finished last week with Gideon stealing the deed to the mystery shack, kicking the Pines family out, and then, claiming the property for his own. And we we begin this episode with Dipper waking from what he believes was a nightmare. Turns out it's all too real. They're actually staying with Seuss's abuelita, who is, she's not much of a character really, but, she's nice enough. Certainly there's some nice melancholy with the idea that, it's not a very nice place. It tells us more about Seuss's upbringing, or rather, I should say, they're clearly poor. And it's, so there's love in the house, but not much else. And so certainly as a place for the Pines family to stay is not ideal. And it kind of fills in, who Seuss is and his backstory a little bit. But the Pines family is clearly down on their luck, and we see Stan talking to Dipper and Mabel's parents, and at least initially kind of reassuring them, trying to suggest, hello, it's like, oh, sure, yeah, no, it's great. We've got them staying in a hotel. Yes, we have plenty to eat. But eventually coming to the conclusion that he doesn't know what else to do, and he can't have the kids staying in those conditions, and it's just something where he's going to have to send them home. And that's, it's framed as definitely as a sad thing. Obviously for us, the viewer, it's like it would be the end of the show, right, if they actually went home. But it's nice to finally have the confirmation, so to speak, of the building real relationship between Dipper and Mabel and Stan, where before, did he really want them around? How did he actually feel about them? He seems to care about them kind of, but he also has higher priorities and, that sort of thing. But in this one, it being just very clear that, he is really sad at the idea of them leaving, but he needs to do what's best for them. And that's kind of nice. But in the meantime, we have, Dipper and Mabel kind of struggling, because it's like, well, I don't understand. How are we actually losing here? They had been kind of operating on sort of the cartoon logic of like, well, but aren't we supposed to win? Like, how's that sort of thing? And yet they're watching on TV as Gideon is talking about, putting up his new psychic revival tent and Gideon land. And then this sets up that he's giving the little pins to everybody, which of course we get the payoff for at the end of the episode, where it's all something that's designed to feel kind of icky for everybody else to be watching that. But we also know that Gideon really, his real motive is looking for the other journal. And we learn specifically he has journal number 2, and he's looking for journal number 1, which we haven't seen before. And so I don't think, other than a desire for power, I don't think the show ever really establishes what Gideon wants with the journal other than it will give him power to do whatever. But, that's fine. He's an interesting enough villain as it is. We don't have to go overboard in terms of establishing his motivation. Just power. Desire for power seems legitimate. But in any event, we have the kids just determined, like, okay, well, we still got to try to do something. And so we're going to get a nice bookend with the first episode where it's like, well, what if we try to enlist the gnomes for help? And this gets us some fun bits of, like, I wonder what gnomes do in the forest. And then they come across the gnome leader in a squirrel bath, and he's startled, but then just says, yes, this is normal. This is normal for gnomes, suggesting that it is not. But it's pretty fun. And then we get to meet Schmeppylock again. And it's set up. It's an interesting twist because it's set up as, here's the thing that, we're going to call back from the first adventure and use that to defeat the bad guy, but it doesn't actually work, because Gideon, so it's like Dipper is using his journal to try to help, but Gideon has a journal of his own. And so he has this little whistle thing that lets him make the gnomes do his bidding instead. And so not only do Dipper and Mabel fail to take down Gideon, but now Gideon has taken their journal. And it's a fun moment where Gideon doesn't realize at first that Dipper's journal is journal number 3. So he's fascinated and overjoyed and sending them on their way and laughing and gloating, only to realize, wait, there's 3 of them, and he still doesn't have number 1. And so this is where, of course, it sets up the big climax. And I feel like just the plotting of this episode is really great for a kid's cartoon. We have the kids trying their own mission only to have it fail, and then B leaving like they have lost. But it is only the villain's misunderstanding about, well, he thinks they must still have journal number 1 and are only tricking him. So he goes after them. And it's only that really causes the new climax, like this big fight with his giant Gideon robot. But even then, that still would have only led to the kids getting arrested for assaulting and Gideon and blowing up his giant robot, except that Stan has his own realization about the pins, and them, it's like, oh, he's not psychic, he's just spying on everybody with these pins. And so, but, what this all sets up is this idea that what is Dipper without the journal? Is he actually good at anything? Is he able to accomplish anything? Or has it always only been that he's kind of had the journal to cheat? And, obviously I think, this is a classic, kids show sort of lesson for him to learn. And I think he ends up expressing it in a way that's, only plausible in cartoon land, where, like if you look at the scale of these 2 big cliffs and the bridge that the robot's on, and just like the angles of, it clearly has Dipper doing a running long jump of like 300 feet. So sure, why not? Okay. But the point though is that he chooses now to believe in himself, that even without the journal he can accomplish something, and that he's going to do what he can anyway. And this is after, Gideon, who has always been, the sickly sweet sort of character, but at the same time, he's gone full out nasty with Dipper at this point, rubbing it in about the journal, shoving him down from the position of a giant robot and giving him a bloody nose. And so for Dipper to manage to make this leap and then just physically fight Gideon. And I think we are all surprised that Gideon is actually more effective at fighting than you might think. But then Dipper is not exactly a prime physical specimen either. So the two of them fighting while Gideon is still controlling the giant robot, which is holding Mabel aloft. And then, of course, you know, it all kind of collapses down and we get the grand payoff of the grappling hook, which is another one of those things that's been set up since episode 1 and teased a couple of times, that she loves having this grappling hook, but all she's ever been able to do with it is break stuff and make a mess until she finally saves the day. Grappling hook, yeah. And then, of course, we, this only leads to the bit where, you know, everyone's thinking, oh, but they just assaulted poor Gideon. And it's always been a source of like intended frustration for us, the audience, that nobody else in the town sees Gideon for what he is until, oops, pardon me, I'm going to sneeze. Until, of course, Stan reveals the surveillance and the pins, and at which point everyone turns on him. Deputy Derlin gets out the tiny handcuffs, and they lead Gideon away to go to prison. And it is a, you know, it's a feeling of triumph in the episode. It does not feel like an easy victory. There were ups and downs. It was a roller coaster of conflict and mystery, and us realizing that, you know, now that the journals seem to all combine to do something. And then, of course, we get the coda, where once again we see Stan go down into this secret, you know, underground bunker beneath the shack. He has, you know, taken Dipper's journal number 3, and then reveals that he has always had number 1 in that bunker. So Gideon was right that it was buried somewhere there. But now, showing all 3 of them, Stan is in this crazy sci-fi control room, puts the 3 in, makes a schematic with the 3 of them, starts some giant machine with some alien thing, and is like, here we go. And then that's where we leave the season. So it's kind of an incredible season finale for a great cartoon, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So I think, you know, next week we'll continue with, you know, episode 1 of season 2. But in the meantime, I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes. Also, check out my Twitch channel. In about half an hour, we're going to be playing a game called For the Queen, which is collaborative story building. It's good stuff. So I'll leave it there.